Philosophy Talk today at noon on KSJE 90.9 FM, Farmington. KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, here to meet your urgent and emergent medical needs, whether they are COVID-19 related or not. Medical emergencies happen when you least expect them, whether it's a stroke, heart attack, illness, or injury. San Juan Regional Medical Center's caregivers are here to provide care to you and your loved ones. Find out more online at sanjuanregional.com. Scott Michlin, and thank you for tuning in to KSJE 90.9 FM over the air, of course, in San Juan County, New Mexico, 103.3 FM over the air in Durango, Colorado, and streaming everywhere on earth from our website, ksje.com. Welcome also to our viewers who are watching this visual radio program this morning. It is streaming live this morning to the KSJE Facebook page and the KSJE Twitter account. It'll be on the KSJE YouTube channel momentarily, but we are glad that you are with me this morning, everybody, because we've got some news to pass along, some weather impacts for school districts in the area that we want to pass along, of course, because of the snow on the ground. So let's take a look at that real quick as I can show that to you right now. Looking at some of the weather impacts. And as you can see, Bloomfield schools have announced that they are closed today. The Health and Human Performance Center here at San Juan College also closed for the day today. These school districts are having virtual learning only today. That includes San Juan College, Farmington schools, Aztec schools, and the Central Consolidated School District. All of those districts, students, teachers, staff are virtual learning today. And of course, we have the updated list on our website at ksje.com/school-closures. And you can check out the updated list there. Coming up in the next few moments, we will be talking about at least one of the school districts on this list, the Aztec School District, because Superintendent Kirk Carpenter is my guest this morning. We'll be talking with Superintendent Carpenter in the next few moments right here on KSJE, so stay tuned for that. Then, of course, later on this hour, we'll be checking in with Amber Francisco from the Farmington Regional Animal Shelter. She'll be talking with me about some of the pets available for adoption this week, and our visual radio viewers will be able to see these pets that we're talking about coming up this morning at 8:50 a.m. Mick Hess will take over the studio. He'll take us roving with the arts after the news at 9 a.m. And it's Tuesday, of course. Mick is making his way through all of the Bach cantatas, and he wrote many of them. In fact, this morning, you'll hear Bach cantata number 199. That is coming up this morning, 9:06 on KSJE. And, of course, we invite you to connect with us on all of our social media platforms, in addition to Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. Don't forget about us on Instagram as well. We share a lot of good information over on our Instagram page, so check that out. Weather forecast, well, let's talk about it. 26 degrees outside our studios right now in San Juan County. We are expecting a partly cloudy day today. There is a winter weather advisory in effect for our area until 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, so more snow showers are likely today, but not much more accumulation. The high today, 36 in Farmington, clearing up overnight with a low of 17. Partly sunny skies tomorrow with a high of 35. Mostly sunny on Thursday, the high 34. Sunshine again on Friday with a high of 38. And partly sunny skies on Saturday with a high of 49 degrees and overnight lows in the 20s to the mid-teens. Well, let me turn to my guest who is joining us this morning from his office in Aztec Superintendent of Schools. Kirk Carpenter is joining me this morning. Mr. Carpenter, good morning. Good to see you and have you on the program.
Good morning, Scott. It's great to be here. It's a snowy day, but we need the moisture, so it's a great day, and thanks for having me on.
You bet. We never complain about the moisture, even if it takes us a few extra moments to get to work. So, and hopefully everyone who's heading onto the roads do take care, and if you don't have to go out, I would recommend you not, because roads are still a little slippery in the area until the sun comes out later on today. But glad that you made it safely to your office, Mr. Carpenter, to join us this morning. And again, as we mentioned, everyone in Aztec schools are learning virtually today, right? That's the new kind of snow day.
Yeah, it is. And, the idea behind that is never to take away the fun of a snow day. It's not, but it is to reinforce what we believe. And that's improving student learning for all students. And so with the technology we have today, I mean, this is not uncommon. A lot of schools across this country have done this for years. We now have the technology where kids have that in their hands. Teachers have the ability to do things they need to if they have to virtually. And so the idea is just to continue that. We've had such a setback with what's happened with COVID and the pandemic. So that in itself reinforces the reason for trying to do this. And again, it's not trying to be an old fuddy-duddy, if you will, but it's really just trying to reinforce that learning, it's important. The more days we can get in, even if it's virtually, is going to be important for our students, not just now, but going ahead. So we do not want to lose any days at all. And so there'll be some virtual instruction. And I imagine during the day, there'll be time for some PE action for kids that want to get out and play in the snow, because we still want our kids to be kids at all ages, but we also want to make sure that we are moving forward with our curriculum, moving forward with learning, because that's something that affects kids for a lifetime. And we do not want to in any way have setbacks any more than what we've already had. So that's what we're doing today, and that's what we set in place this year.
Understood. And you mentioned that term setback, and I want to ask you a bit about that, because I know it has to concern you as well as every other educator in our state, in our country, that some students are not doing as well as other students with this virtual learning and the disruption to the regular schedules that's been going on now for, almost 11 months. And so tell me about that concern that you have, and how Aztec schools are trying to catch kids back up or work with these kids where they happen to be, if they're excelling or having difficulties.
Well, I think if there's a benefit, now, I'm always the one that tries to find the positive in every situation. Obviously, there's a lot of negative with what's happened with learning, although we haven't seen as big of impact at the elementaries that we thought we might see. But with having kids, even just 2 days with the small groups, there's a lot of argument about smaller class sizes and what it really does to student achievement. But when you split them in half, you can't argue with that. And so even have kids 2 days, what we're doing, and I know a lot of schools are doing, is we're drilling down to what specifically kids are missing, the skills, not just a competency. So we're really getting down to the root cause of what maybe they're having trouble with. And so that gives teachers the ability, even with the smaller class sizes, to really spend a lot of one-on-one with kids. And so we're not going to have, I think, the major drop-off that we would have if we didn't have the ability to get our students back in the classroom. The elementary schools obviously were the first ones, and there's many reasons for that. A lot of it is the size of the cohorts, limiting the, if you have an incident happen, it affects a much smaller number than it will in the secondaries. But all that being said, we also know that in the elementary schools, that's where the foundations are built. And as like a building, it's only as good as what the foundation is. I don't care if it's fundamentals in baseball and football, all those things are important. And in elementary school, that is absolutely the case. So we're able to do some things like find out where they are with assessments. We're still doing all of our assessments. We're still doing our 3-work common formative assessments. We're doing a lot of things to make sure we identify specifically where they are and where the deficits are. And then we'll have to look at that as we go into next year. It may be a year where you have some intermediate grades for a while. Some kids may not have been engaged, so they need a lot more work. So they may have to be in a first grade plus instead of going to second grade. And we'll have to decide how we can do that with staff. But nothing's off the table. We want to make sure we address every single kid, whether it's a student that's done very well or a student that hasn't engaged for whatever reason, whether it's will or skill. We want to make sure we address those needs. And that's going to be a challenge. But I will tell you, as a former coach, those are the things that keep me running, because that gets your adrenaline going, and it makes you bring out the creative things and create opportunities, not obstacles. I've always said in our district, if there's an obstacle, turn it into an opportunity, because we owe that to our kids and our staff, and they've done a masterful job. But there's a lot of work left to do this year as we identify where students really are. Retention is not out of the question. And that is something that we made very clear. Regardless of what we're facing, we have to find ways to move through this. We've given the resources. And if some students aren't ready to move forward, we will have retention meetings. We will have summer school for students. There will be students that may not graduate. There's nothing that's going to be given. We have worked very hard to make sure everybody has the opportunity to succeed. And so that's what's going to happen. And it's not being insensitive, but the reality of all this is in the true nature of teaching a life lesson. No matter what obstacle you have, there are ways you can work through it if we collaborate and do that. And I think that's another benefit, is we've had a lot of collaboration from families. But it's also very important to understand that there's going to be things we face in life that are very, very difficult. And you can't just ignore them, and you're not going to be given things. And so we need to make sure we're reinforcing the work ethic, and that's going to be a great life lesson, I think, that's taught through this: resiliency, tolerance, a bunch of other things. And so that's what we're trying to do, and that's our approach.
Well, that makes sense to me, Mr. Carpenter. And again, using what's going on as this kind of learning opportunity, because certainly we're all in this and dealing with it in our own ways, for sure. Let me ask you though about your seniors, and of course the clock is ticking, and they won't have another year to maybe help them catch up. But maybe there are some things the district is planning to do for seniors that maybe need a little bit of extra assistance to be able to get that diploma in May.
Yes, I mean, we've identified them. We've had them on the radar, the ones that we're concerned about. Of course, we're concerned about all of our students. I think at the secondaries, your freshmen and seniors are absolutely key grades because, as a freshman, if you get started behind, it's very difficult to catch up, especially in our district where we have 6 credits a year. You need 24 to graduate. So if you do the math, you can't afford to fail or you're going to be behind. And so with seniors, we've identified them. We're working with them. We've created different schedules at the high school where there's some extended time for some learning and intervention and that type of thing. And so seniors that may need more work will be able to double up on some things. They may be doing some face-to-face and additional virtual classes to make sure they get caught up with their credits. Because again, not ignoring the situation or the difficulty to maneuver through it in the first semester. There's a lot of seniors that could be in jeopardy, and we want to get them across the stage, if whether it's virtually or walking across the stage in May. We don't know what's going to happen there. We're optimistic, but we're definitely identifying and working with our counselors. Are doing a tremendous job of staying in contact with the seniors, with the parents, to make sure everybody is on pace, or at least doing their part to stay on pace, because it is a lot of work. I equate this to a situation that, you have to forgive me, but I go back to the former coaching days.
Once a coach, always a coach. You keep reminding us of that, Mr. Carpenter.
I know. And
that's okay.
Notice I'm saying old, and I'm not saying old. Okay. So I just want to clarify that, why we're talking about clarification.
An important distinction, yes.
But if you have trouble in hitting, you don't do it less. You do it more, but you do it with purpose on the specific things you're having trouble with. And that's the same thing that's happening in learning, which is far more important than a game. But the approach is the same. What specific the specific needs do the students have, and then target those needs. The other thing we're doing is there are some classes maybe students failed that maybe part of the competencies they mastered. So we're measuring where are they in that class, so they aren't having to retake the whole class. It may take 3 or 4 weeks to get their credit, not because it's easy, but because we're targeting the specific competencies that they did not get earlier in the semester, but some they did. So they can actually, it's not like clapping out of a class, but it is testing to a point in that class to make sure they're getting taught exactly what they need. So we're being, again, a lot more targeted. It's not about seat time. It's about mastering the competencies and skills necessary to show that they have learned that specific subject. So there's a lot of that going on as well. And I think between that and the face-to-face coming back, which was delayed for our first cohort today, so they'll be a week behind, not a week behind, but a week later than the rest of their classmates, that there's a lot of work being done to try to make sure everybody can be successful. But when I say that, it's not just the school. The school can only do so much. It's what people are doing away from school that really matters, because that is where a lot of this work has to take place. That's where we need our parents engaging. That's why we have the hashtag check-in with your kids program and campaign that's still going on. And so it's going to, again, take everybody more than ever before, which to me is the way it should be. We need the collaboration between families and schools, and we're getting it through this pandemic. And you know what? If we move away from this, if we move away from the partnership and the collaboration between families and the school, the community and school, shame on us. because this is something that has made us change and adjust, but there are positive changes and adjustments that we've had to make during this time, and those are the things that we need to hang on to even after this pandemic's over.
Very good. And you mentioned a couple of things I want to pick up on there, Mr. Carpenter, which is kind of the return to face-to-face for your older students. And I think that's a new development since the last time we spoke, or was just starting up in January. And so, this is important because this is, again, the first time these students have been in a classroom in 11 months.
Yeah, it is. And it's going to be an adjustment in itself. And that's why there's been a lot of conversations about should secondary schools return without teachers being vaccinated. And let me be the first one to say, if I can wave a magic wand, everybody would be vaccinated and teachers would be up there as well. And they are essential workers for obvious reasons. But I think what we have to do is look at the research and the data and make sure we get our students back as soon as possible. And we can't wait because there are going to be adjustments in the face-to-face. And so let's say it's a 2-week adjustment. That's 2 more weeks where the quality of learning is maybe not as high as it could be as we adjust to that new system. It's not easy for our teachers, and we absolutely understand that. They're in the trenches. We don't understand exactly what's going on, and I'm not going to sit here as a superintendent and say, yes, I understand exactly what's happening, but we do understand the emotions. We understand the adjustments that are going to have to be made, and what we need to do is get our students back as soon as possible so that if it's 2 weeks of adjustment, we still have 8 weeks left of school, because we're going into June this year. We opted to go 10 extra days this year up front and at the very end for obvious reasons. We thought we'd still be in this situation. And the most important thing we can do is make sure students are learning, and also staff. Staff's going to have to learn by doing. There's no book on a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of examples. Even our elementary teachers have shared with secondary teachers on how they've handled the hybrid learning. So it's going to be an adjustment. It's not going to be easy. But I go back to and say some of the most rewarding things we get in life aren't easy. And some of the most important things we do in life are not easy. And some of the biggest impact we can have on our students' lives, they're not easy, but they are the most rewarding. So we just need to keep working together going forward. And we as a district need to support our teachers and whatever they need as much as we can to help them do that as well. Because it's not just about student learning. It's about improving our staff learning as well. And again, I think it's going to take all of us doing that. And there's some tremendous work going on where people are sharing, even teachers that aren't in the classroom, that are sharing different ways, different types of Google classroom platforms. So there is a lot of work. And again, the collaboration it's just incredible. And so we are going to move forward. Learning will move forward. It'll continue to move forward. But it's going to take everybody. If you have one person not rowing on one side of the boat, you're going to go in circles. We're not going in circles. Everybody's going to row the boat. We're going forward.
Very good. And you mentioned, again, a couple of things about some of the testing results that you are seeing that kind of is positive through all this. And so can you maybe take us through this summer, maybe when your staff will be going over some of this data? Because I know you compile a lot of data from these test scores and assessments and things like that to kind of see what worked for your students, what didn't work for your students, or what maybe needs to be tweaked. And of course, we hope everyone's back face to face in the fall. But I imagine there's going to be a lot of school districts and a lot of educators going over what's been going on and what's been tried this past year to kind of see what we can glean from the student achievement that we're collecting.
And that's exactly what's going on right now. It'll continue. And again, it'll be student by student, skill by skill. And then some decisions late in the year will probably have to be made on, exactly how do we organize as a learning institution that will be different. The pandemic may go away, but the effects and the adjustments are probably going to be 2 years or more after we are back together. And I say that because, again, there are students that have engaged that just are still struggling. There are students that have not engaged that are absolutely struggling, and there are students that have done pretty well with the virtual. So, it's going to be a smorgasbord approach in many respects, but it's going to be very targeted at the same time. So the data that we'll look at will be at all levels. The elementary scores, like I said, we were pleased at where they were really in our initial assessments. We did an interim assessment at 9 weeks. We just did one before Christmas. So, but there's definitely still some concerns. In secondary, a lot of it was difficult just because the lack of engagement at the secondary schools was just incredible. So how much that the integrity of those scores we have to really look at. But I think we'll get a better opportunity as we go on through this semester, especially at the secondary schools, to really understand where kids are. At the secondary, there won't be a lot of adjustments, like I mentioned, maybe intermediate grades at the elementaries. At the high schools, that won't be necessary, but there will be maybe some kids having to do summer school on certain classes and maybe doubling up over the course of their high school years just to make sure they get credit current. So it's a different approach. And it's going to be one that we are already talking about. We have been talking about. And as we go forward, hopefully we'll be planning and saying, here's where we need to go. And even if we have intermediate grades at the elementary, it may be temporary. Once those students get caught up, which we really believe they can, just based off the way we're actually given instruction nowadays, because of it's much more targeted, then we'll have to make some adjustments. So it's not going to necessarily mean additional staff. It's just going to be reassigning staff and students in a little bit different model, but all based on that data that we look at.
Very good. And I didn't mean to leave the impression that you're going to wait until summer to look at some of the data you've been collecting. I imagine you've been poring over that since the school year began to kind of see how things are going, and your staff is doing that as well.
No, and I didn't take it that way, Scott. I know we've talked enough. You know how we do our work, and so, but yeah, it's definitely something. It's ongoing. It's,
right.
It's not going to be something that last minute. It's a long plan that has been in process, and exactly how that plan formalizes and manifests itself is going to be dependent on how kids proceed and where they are in their learning, and we need to adjust. It's a difficult challenge for principals in many respects. They've been working hard on scheduling, but it's something that's going to be important. Like I said, the pandemic is going to move forward. We don't know when, but even when it does, the aftermath of it, whether we talk about the economy, we talk about schools, we talk about learning, is going to last. Our approach is, how much can we offset that, and how quick can we move through that without taking any seductive shortcuts, but to make sure we're addressing those things that need to be addressed so we can try to move kids forward. Because again, especially our younger children, they are learning the foundations. In third grade, you learn to read. In first and second, you put together things so you can start to read. Those are important skills, and some of our students have struggled with that. So that could be a lifelong thing that affects them in their own socio-economical status. It could affect our country in the democratic process, because there's a lot of things to be said about how learning is associated with that. So those are the things we have to really pay attention to and not be afraid to do things differently. I've said it many times in our district. We will change horses in the middle of the stream. And there's a saying, don't change horses in the middle of the stream. Well, if you're stuck in the stream, you're not getting anywhere with the same horse. And so we need to reevaluate it, and we will make adjustments as we need to, and we'll be very flexible. And regardless of whether, obviously, I'm not going to be here next year, but we are going to set ourselves up to be successful, because that's what's important for our students and our staff.
Right, and I do want to ask you about that too, Mr. Carpenter, and that would be the search for the next superintendent for Aztec schools, and that process is underway. We talked about it briefly last month, and so that is ongoing. Can you give us an update of where things stand this month on the search?
Yes, I mean, I can't tell you about applicants or how many have applied. I'm kind of out of that process, and rightfully so. But I do know right now what they are doing is that the job is open. They're taking applications, and they'll do that probably up through the rest of this month and early March. There's surveys going on with the district as far as what they would like to see in the new superintendent and things that are valuable. It's not a judgment on me, but this district's going to move forward. I'm very confident that they will find a superintendent, and I mean this humbly, better than me. If I've done any great things, it's because of the team I've had around me, and that team's still here. And so I'm very confident that this district will be in great shape. Dr. Linda Paul is leading the search committee. She's a former superintendent in Aztec. She's works for the School Boards Association doing these types of things. The board is very committed. So I'm very confident that whoever is sitting in this chair next year will be even more qualified and be able to take this district forward. And because there's a lot of great work that's been done, a lot of great foundations have been laid, and more importantly, there's a great team that will surround them. And you're only as good as what you surround yourself with. And I've been very blessed in my career to have some tremendous people around me, and people far smarter than I am. And I say that with the utmost honesty, because that's the only way you move forward as a leader, is if you surround yourself with people that are smarter, because you cannot make all the decisions, and we should not make decisions from one office. And that's never how we've done it here in our district. And so I'm very confident that as we move forward, we'll get that done. But the process hopefully will be wound up with interviews and that by April, and then possibly have a superintendent in here in May or June. I'm not going anywhere, but that allows for a lot of cross-training, a lot of informational sharing, a lot of meetings they can have with people to understand where the district is, where it's going. We're collecting some of that information as well. So there's a lot of work going on, and we want to make sure the transition is smooth as possible for the benefit, again, of this community, which has been an amazing community, this school district, which is a well-respected school district, and, again, most importantly, our staff, and single most important, the students.
And so you are telling us this morning that you are planning to be available to help with that transition whenever the new superintendent comes on board, to have some kind of cross-training, as you mentioned, and not just head out the door when the new person comes in.
No, I'm very committed. My last day is scheduled for June 30th. Whether that's the case or not, it may be a couple weeks before that. However, I will not leave this office until we are situated with a new superintendent in one way or another. And even if it's after June 30th, I'm not going anywhere. I will spend as much time after I am retired making sure that this transition is smooth. Not because a new superintendent needs a lot of things taught to them, but what they do need to understand is where the district is, where it's been, where it's going. Every superintendent has a vision. That's not to cloud the vision and make it a Kirk Carpenter vision as they go forward. That's absolutely the opposite. The most important thing is to make sure that the efficiency of the transition is there by understanding what's been happening. What are our plans moving forward? Because those plans should not stop. I mean, there's a lot of planning that has to take place as a school district, and it doesn't change when you change the superintendent. The superintendent is a coworker, although it may have to make the person may have to make ultimate decisions, but ultimately that superintendent should be a co-worker in what's going on in the district. And so that's part of the process too, as far as making the transition, is to give them the best opportunity to move in as quickly as possible in the most efficient and effective manner for everybody and all involved.
Very good. Well, I'm going to make a note to reach out to Dr. Paul or the school board to make sure these monthly interviews are written into the contract for the new superintendent. I hope they're as open as you have been to meeting with me on a regular basis. So,
well, I've already got it down on the list I have going for the new soup as far as different things happening, Scott, and I would have no doubt that they would welcome that, because this for us has been just a great privilege to be able to do these interviews.
Well, I appreciate it very much, and your openness and willingness to be on the air with me. Couple minutes remaining this morning, Mr. Carpenter. Anything you're hearing out of Santa Fe that might affect the Aztec School District, either good or bad? Any bills that you're watching? Anything that you're hearing?
We're watching the funding formula. There's different versions of what they want to do with funding. The biggest thing we're trying to push is that it holds us harmless in our funding, and not trying to let the formula just work for itself based on numbers this year and making adjustments for next year. That would be a catastrophe. What we need is to hold harmless and looking back at the funding levels, enrollment levels, maybe with some minor adjustments from the 1920 school year, because we don't, again, know what's going to happen. We don't know how many students may come back, how many students may opt to just find another virtual setting, but we have to plan for what was. And with that, the funding has to be there to support it. There's some momentum for that to happen, but there's a couple different versions of bills, and some are not quite as friendly as others. So that's the biggest thing we're working on. I will tell you personally, we're working on a safety bill that Senator Neville is carrying, and I'm actually working very closely with him on this bill to get anonymous reporting systems across the state, and that bill will be heard in the first committee this week. So selfishly, I mentioned that, but it's such an important piece of what we need to do for safety in the state, and anybody that knows me knows I have a passion for safety, not simply because of the incident that happened in Aztec. We've always had that here. And so that's another important bill. I think there's several, and there's some bills going through that could really change the way administrators are held or could be held with liability, and that's not a good bill. So we're watching that. And so, as the legislation goes, I've always said it's like sausage. You don't want to see how it's made, You just want to see the end result, and hopefully it's a good result. And that's the same case as what we have going on right now. There's a lot of bills in early development, and they will get amended a lot. But those are some significant ones, and I know there's many more. But I think by next month we'll be able to have a better idea of which ones really impacted us and give a better understanding of that. So there's also changes in graduation being recommended that we don't know where those bills will go, whether they'll try to push and not get those pushed through, but really look at some work on the interim between the sessions to see what needs to change. So a lot happening in Santa Fe. And again, we commend all of our local guys. They are tremendous advocates for us, and everybody down there actually, but our guys really do a good job for us down there.
Well, very good. And again, if someone is certainly interested in any of these bills or topics that you mentioned, it behooves them to kind of watch them proceed through the committee process. That is how it works in Santa Fe, and then they get to the full House or Senate to vote on them to pass along to the governor. So it's good to know that those things are being watched. Mr. Carpenter, we're out of time, I'm afraid to say, but I always appreciate our conversation. So thank you very much once again.
Well, you're welcome. And Scott, this program, it's heard by a lot of people, but I want you to understand that you even have young listeners. There's an 8-year-old in Farmington named Sam that is listening to this program. And so you have fans at all ages. And I just want to tell you that to make sure you understand there are people out there listening. But in all honesty and appreciation for you, we appreciate you allowing us to come on and talk about the Aztec school system. It's important for us. It's important for the community. So thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. It's what we do here at KSJE. And good morning to you, Sam. And thank you for listening this morning. And as Mr. Carpenter said, I'm not an old broadcaster. I'm an old broadcaster. We can end it with that, right?
You can end it with maybe the old broadcaster, but in my opinion, Scott, you've always been one of the best. So just know that, and I mean that seriously. So, well, old or not, you're one of the best, and we appreciate you.
Well, it's kind of you to say. Thank you very much. That's Kirk Carpenter. He is the superintendent of schools with the Aztec School District. My guest this morning here on KSJE, and I'll be back with more in just a moment. Everybody, the time is coming up on 8:41.
Should AI be a part of every BA? From American Public Media, this is Marketplace Tech. I'm Molly Wood.
Reported by Weaver, a national CPA and advisory firm that firmly believes it's important to build rapport before reports. Weaver, accounting for more than numbers. Learn more at weaver.com. And by Edison Research, dedicated to quality consumer research and public opinion polling for corporations and organizations worldwide. Learn more at edisonresearch.com/marketplace.
Colby College is a private liberal arts college located in southern Maine. You can take classes